Welcome to Sunday Recap. You are here with myself, Nana, and today we have a very special guest we haven't seen in a long time, Jing.
Hey,
Hey, welcome back to Sunday Recap.
Great to be here.
So we had interactive active church on Sunday, which is a very interactive service, and of course we're still on the theme of Elijah, faith and fire. So Jing, as per usual, I'm sure you watch Sunday Recap all the time, so you know what I'm about to ask you.
Yeah.
So in 3 minutes or less, can you give us a summary of what you preached about on Sunday?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a little bit less. We followed up on the story of Elijah, as you said, and we've just had the kind of big moment on the mountaintop with the "My God is bigger than your God" kind of thing. And things should be good for Elijah, but actually it turns out that Queen Jezebel is not happy with what's gone on, and she is chasing down Elijah, and so he is on the run, Jason born supremacy kind of thing, in hiding, and he's running and running, and he naturally just gets very tired, and as he's exhausted, he doesn't know what's going on. Things haven't gone the way he thought, and so he's in absolute despair. In fact, he's at the point of actually asking God to take his life, and like that's how far he's gone. But God meets Elijah where he's at and sends an angel who provides food, gets him to eat and gets him to rest. Elijah wakes up a second time, same thing again, eat and rest. And until then, Elijah is ready for what God has for him next. And we're going to hear that next week. And basically we really just picked up on kind of this one-liner really, which was, when we're in despair, remember that God cares. And I think there's two sides to that, is what we kind of focused on, that we do have moments like Elijah ourselves, where we reach a point in a season of our life or a moment in our life where things just fall apart, and we can be in moments of despair, and in those moments to remember that we have a God who is not distant, but he's close. He cares for our needs, and kind of within that to remember that how we are is important to God, in whether it's food, rest, our thoughts, all those kind of things are important to God, and God meets Elijah's needs in those ways. And we kind of explored a little bit about what that would mean in a very practical way.
So let's just touch on those 2 points, and just maybe just recap a little bit about the things that have kind of contributed to Elijah feeling despair and depression, and just the fact that it's okay to feel your emotions. And Elijah was, when we read about Elijah, it's very clear that he was in a really kind of dark place.
I think it's very important for us to remember that God made us the way we are, and we are made with emotions. And actually emotions help. I almost say that they're almost like a bit like a traffic light system. Emotions kind of flag for us, like if something's good, if something's maybe not so good. And that's okay, and for us to be okay with our emotions, to know that, like Elijah and the story so far, there are moments where things are going really well, and maybe you're on top of the world, but at the same time there are moments, as you say, where we can get to a very dark place in our lives, and we have to remember that God is there in the best moments of our lives, and even in the lowest points in our life as well. And our emotions actually should be, we should see those emotions and we should channel them to direct us actually towards God. So when things are going well, that's a time for us to really give thanks to God and to praise God. And actually, even when things are going badly, to remember we can still give thanks and praise God, but also know that we can turn to God, not turn away from him. It's in those moments that we need to lean in even more. And even sometimes when we forget that, that's the kind of good God that we serve. So even in this moment of Elijah's despair, and maybe as a Christian, sometimes we can relate to that. Elijah did everything God had asked of him. He was obedient, he was faithful, and sometimes as a Christian we can feel in our lives maybe there's certain things that we thought would happen if we remained faithful and obedient, and they just didn't happen the way we thought they would happen. And that could be anything. It could be like Elijah's, a lack of food, stuff to sustain him, but it could be a lack of, and then that's where you fill in the blank. It might be a job, it might be a relationship, and it's kind of like, God, I've been obedient, and you just reach this place where the emotion of that lack brings you to a dark place. And that's happened to me. People go through that, and I think it's for us as God's people, as Christians, not to pretend that isn't true, and to be okay with those emotions, and to be okay, especially in a church context, with your church family, to say, like, actually, when people say on Sunday or in passing, how are you, is actually to be okay with, actually, I'm actually in a really tough place at the moment, and I'm struggling, and I've got a lot of questions, I have doubts, and that's okay. We can begin that conversation, say, okay, let's go from there. We use the analogy of like a balloon, and we don't have to feel like we're always this inflated balloon. Sometimes we feel deflated. Like that's the reality with life and what's going on in the world, and that's okay.
It's okay to be honest and transparent. We're all human,
exactly,
after all, and so is Elijah. So and God also, like, in terms of Elijah's needs, he's this amazing showdowns happened, and Ahab and Jezebel obviously aren't pleased with what's happened, and he's run away into this cave, and he's after being threatened, but God actually practically meets Elijah's needs. He's essentially like on the run, but God comes through for him in a practical way, doesn't he?
And I think that's important for us to remember, that whilst there is a spiritual reality and a spiritual reality for our walk with God, that we are also physical beings. We talked about the Jewish idea of what we understand as a soul. Sometimes we think of this separation between our body and the soul, but in Hebrew thought that was never the case. And so God cares as much about our kind of physical need as much as our spiritual growth and need as well. And that's, as you say, like, God meets Elijah's need in that moment in a very kind of, well, I guess today we would call like a very practical way. Like, he was hungry, you got him food. He needed rest, you got him to sleep. And actually, in the busyness of life, and sometimes in those moments of despair, we can forget that actually maybe I just need to eat something, or maybe I just need to sleep. I just need a better night's sleep. Sometimes we reach a point where maybe we're struggling with relationships, or we're struggling with people at work, or we're struggling with stress or pressure, and actually sometimes we just need sleep. There's that term, you're not you when you're hungry, right? The kind of Snickers kind of thing, or we get hangry. Like, that is real. Like, we're connected in that way, and so I love that God in this moment really demonstrates that to Elijah, and I think we need to remember that. I think and not forget that. I think God designed the Sabbath for us to have certain rhythms, to remember to stop, to pause, and to reflect, and to think, actually, what is it in a very practical way that I need right now in order to keep going for the next bit that God has for me, the next week, the next day, to make sure that we are not running on empty. Burnout, and that's why it's really good to kind of, I mentioned on Sunday, to think of Sunday as the start of the week, where maybe you come and you're filled and you receive and you feed, and then that gives you what you need for the week ahead. And there's moments also where you can almost, you daily top that up, right? Top it up with your daily Bible reading, come to Connect group, pray together, keeping yourself filled. Part of it is spiritual, so also, like, go for a nice meal with someone. Go to bed early. Do things that are going to practically help you, and build those into your rhythms.
It's so interesting, this series of Elijah that we're doing and focusing on. We've seen the miraculous, we've seen the signs and wonders, and now we're seeing like the humanity side, the human side of Elijah. And so, lots of points to relate to. So I would really encourage you to go back and listen to Jing's wonderful summary on Sunday from Active Church, and also catch up on the reading of Elijah in 1 Kings 18 as well, and just see where maybe God might be speaking to you, maybe where you might be able to relate to, maybe how Elijah might have felt, and and pray into that, and ask God to refresh you if you are feeling depleted, if you are feeling like you're not in the greatest place. Remember that we are all human beings, but God welcomes our humanity after all. And so, obviously we are here every Sunday, 10:30 for our Sunday services, and also you can join us for our Connect group on Tuesdays at 6:30, where we unpack all of this stuff, and it's just great to be able to share our ideas. So thank you very much, Jing, for joining us on Sunday Recap. And of course, we will see you guys next week.